May I have your attention?
This is a smattering of the types of things that we're going to handle today. The bulletproof method for paying far less on LinkedIn ads than your competitors are, which is always amazing. We'll also talk about optimal account setup that grants you better A/B testing, easier ways to find and report things, and just overall make your account a lot easier to work with. I'll also mention the worksheet that you have access to. It's our advanced guide. It has a lot of these things in it that we're going to be talking about, but it has much more. So feel free afterwards to dive in and find even more things that we just don't have time to cover in an hour webinar. All right, first off, as we're talking about account structure, I've noticed, because I've audited over 1,000 LinkedIn ad accounts, and I see that sometimes people name their campaigns in very unhelpful ways. Like you might see a campaign called 2024 webinar or white paper 1, and realize those aren't helpful. What that means is, like, you can't tell from that account or that campaign name who the audience is that's being targeted. You might know what sort of webinar you were running in 2024. Like maybe you could remember that, but someone else couldn't. I'll also mention that if you build a campaign around an asset, like a white paper, a ebook or something, as soon as you're no longer promoting that particular asset, now that campaign is just taking up space in your account. And what you've done is you've kind of shot yourself in the foot, because LinkedIn really cares about past history of spend. And so if you build a campaign that is all about one asset and then you shut it down and you start a new campaign, now you have to build that history back from scratch. So what I highly recommend is come up with a naming structure for your own campaigns that, and this can be quite long, you can add as much to it, but be really descriptive of the things about that campaign that won't change. This is going to make it a lot easier to navigate your account, a lot easier to report on, and to run your tests. So for instance, SC is the abbreviation I use for sponsored content. That's what LinkedIn calls their single image ads. And so you can see in this campaign name, I'm starting it with the ad format. And then I touch on the objective. WV is website visits. And then I touch on the targeting for this account, or sorry, for this campaign. So I might be targeting marketing manager titles in the US. And I've separated these things by a pipe, like a vertical separator, but you could do underscores, you could do spaces, whatever. I also like to add in here things like what position in the funnel these things are. So I might put stage 1 ahead of it if I know that this is my cold campaigns. Stage 2 might be my first retargeting campaigns. Stage 3, my second retargeting campaigns. If you are very descriptive in your campaign names, it's going to make things a lot easier to navigate. And you'll be creating these evergreen campaigns that are building history. So every time that you launch a new asset, you're not launching it into a new campaign, you're launching it into an existing campaign that LinkedIn already knows and expects how it's going to perform. And so you're going to see lower costs over time and faster delivery. Next thing I want to mention is about microsegmentation. It's really easy with LinkedIn to create like one giant campaign with lots of different audiences in it. People see the job titles box and they start typing in like, oh, the CEO, CFO, oh, marketing manager, head of IT. And you realize how different all of those different roles are. And when they're all smushed together in one campaign, when one performs really well and one performs really poorly, you can't actually tell. It all looks like just one big average set of metrics. So instead, like this is something I see a lot of times when marketers are wanting to target marketing decision makers. They might do marketing job function with seniorities, manager and above. And that's really easy to do. It's one campaign, boom, you're done. But you also realize that CMOs perform very differently and they care about very different things than a marketing manager does. So instead, if you separate this into 4 campaigns, you have one for your marketing managers, one for directors, one for VPs, and then one for CMOs. Sure, you now have 4 campaigns to manage instead of just one, but you were going to show them the same, 1 or 2 ads anyway. So you don't have to create new ads. You just put the same A/B test in all 4 of these campaigns. It's not that much more work. But what you get out of this is you get focus group level testing. So now you get to see like, We've even found in doing this that we get lower costs per click from CMOs than we do from marketing directors occasionally. That's a really good insight to know, because if you know that you can reach someone with the ultimate decision-making power for less than you can reach someone underneath them, yeah, I'm going to dedicate more budget there. So I highly recommend having audience sizes of these micro segments between about 20,000 to 100,000. It doesn't mean that your total addressable market, or what we call your TAM, doesn't mean that that has to be 20,000 to 100,000. For some of you with really tight audiences, it might. But I'm going to take a total addressable market of 2 million, and I'm going to break it into little campaigns of 20,000 to 100,000. And that's going to give me really cool intelligence on who in my audience cares, who responds, who doesn't, who cares about my individual offers that I'm putting out there in a really cool way. LinkedIn does recommend that your audience sizes are 300,000 and above in most cases, which is kind of crazy. When I have an audience size of 300,000, usually I can find at least one or two ways to break that campaign up into two different pieces so I can be comparing. LinkedIn doesn't give you better performance, better advantages for having a large account, or sorry, a large audience size like maybe Meta would. Meta is great with 1 million plus people in audiences. LinkedIn, try to keep it tighter. If you go too much smaller than 20K, you can go all the way down to 300 people in an audience. And with retargeting campaigns, sometimes with account-based marketing campaigns where you're targeting just a specific list of companies, sometimes you're forced to be that little. But when you get that little, first of all, it's hard to spend any sort of budget. And second of all, you usually have to pay a lot. You usually have to bid really high just to get LinkedIn to show those. So I recommend that audience size of 20,000 to 100,000, but this is just a rule of thumb. You can go above that, you can go below that. It's totally up to you. I get asked a lot about how I handle testing across accounts, especially A/B testing. And I want to share with you, this is the account organization that we put into play for all of our clients. And it's fairly simple when you think about it, but it's running multiple A/B tests. So we have A/B tests anytime that we want to evaluate them, but we also have a multivariate test going on at any given time. So it's kind of beautiful. I don't know if my slide here can do it justice. So here's the concept. Let's say you have a persona, and this persona doesn't live anywhere in your LinkedIn ads. This is like, you come up with this. Let's say my persona is heads of IT at tech companies, at enterprise level tech companies. Let's say that. I know I can reach that head of IT 4 different ways using LinkedIn's targeting. I can target them by their job title. I can say CIO and CTO with all the other stuff, the industry, the company size, that's all going to stay the same. All I'm doing is changing how I'm targeting the individual. So I can target those job titles. I can target IT, like deep IT skills, and layer on a CXO seniority. That's going to give me heads of IT. I can target groups of, let's say the group is 4 CIOs and CTOs. They only let you in the group if you have that title. So it works out nicely. And then there's also a 4th way that didn't fit on the slide, but this would be job function of IT with seniority of CXO or C-level. And so now you can see there's 4 different ways of targeting the same persona. It's still the same persona. I'm just testing the ways that LinkedIn allows me to reach them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch my A/B test. I might come up with 2 ads. Let's say it's 2 ads with a slight variation promoting a single offer, or maybe it's 2 separate offers, and I'm just running 1 ad for each offer, just trying to see what do heads of IT care about. Because all of these other targeting types, these other campaigns, because they're essentially the same audience, I can run exactly the same A/B test in all of them. So I don't have to come up with 6 or 8 unique ads. I just come up with the 2 that I want to A/B test. Then I go ahead and optimize for click-through rates, which is LinkedIn's default setting for how it tests creative. So you don't have to really change anything here. But what you can do, if you, let's say, go into this job titles campaign and you're trying to compare how ad A is performing versus ad B, before you've spent, let's say, $500 or $1,000 on that campaign, the results might not be statistically significant. So like, oh yeah, it's going to take me a while to evaluate this campaign. But when you realize they're all essentially the same audience and they all have ad A and ad B, with one simple pivot table in Excel, you can group these and at any time and go, oh, how does my ad A perform compared to ad B? And you'll usually have statistically significant data findings here across the board before you ever find it per targeting type. But then let's say you get feedback from sales down the road where they say, ooh, this skills campaign, it's generating audiences that are maybe they have to disqualify more of them. It's not quite as targeted, or it's producing lower quality leads for some reason. You go, great, this is a fantastic learning. I can pause my skills campaign and continue running titles, groups, and job function. And over time, you can find what is my ideal method of targeting using the data LinkedIn gives us. I've now found what works best for our business, and now I can funnel more budget to the things that actually do work. So I would recommend, and this works really well if you have a very good naming structure, because all of your campaigns are going to look the same, except for the difference is going to be whether you're targeting title, skills, groups, or job function. All right. I know I just covered a lot, and that was kind of a heavy bomb to drop on you. What questions do you have about account structure, about campaign structure, testing, anything like that?
Yeah, so we do have a bunch of questions in the Q&A, so we'll try to go through them. So Julia and a couple of other people have this. It's a statement question. So Julia says, I am also guilty of marketing in above audience segments. We work in a single niche. So if I break them down, will I come up against any minimum size restrictions? And this is a question others have as well.
You definitely can. If you try to cut up small audiences already, and let's say you want to separate them by company size of like, oh, let's see how small companies, these roles react compared to large companies. Or you could do the same thing with seniorities or really anything you choose. If you cut up an audience and you realize that it's less than 20,000 people, you might go, oh, okay, I'd like this intelligence of seeing how these compare, but since the audience is already too tight, if it's less than 20,000, I usually wouldn't cut it up, or I may look to combine it with something else. But you can go all the way down to an audience size of 300 people total. That's the size that LinkedIn will actually let you run the campaign.
Wow. Okay. So Alice has a question, and I think this is just for confirmation, but they were asking, are you talking about specific campaigns or campaign groups? I think it was 8 minutes ago, it says. So whatever that was referring to.
Yes. So campaign groups, I wholesale ignore. They are near worthless to me. What they are, they're basically a folder where you can stick campaigns. They do have a budget optimization feature that sounds cool, but then you realize that every campaign within that campaign group has to share the same objective. And I don't choose one objective for all of my campaigns. I go with the objective that's going to be the least expensive and the highest performance for each ad type and for what I'm trying to do. So that's too much of a constraining factor for me. All of that to say, it makes it really inconvenient when you have campaigns in different campaign groups that you have to click down into one and check on something and then pop back up and then go click on the other one. So what I do is I build all of my campaigns under a single campaign group, and anything that I would think about wanting to separate into separate campaign groups, I just put that element in the name of the campaign so I can just very easily search in Campaign Manager when I'm trying to find groupings of those things. So everything I've shared, these are individual campaigns, ignoring campaign groups.
Okay, cool. So someone else asked also about like, aren't groups near impossible to include? So we're just gonna go with you'd use one.
Yep, exactly. They're too constraining.
Too constraining. So Dave has this question. What happens to my 2-ad test with different targeting methods when LinkedIn recommends 5 ads per campaign?
I will tell you why LinkedIn recommends 5 ads campaign. Now they're starting to recommend 7 ads per campaign. And that is because each ad the number of ads you have in a campaign determines the frequency cap of how often your ads can be shown to the same individual. So if you have three, let's say four, if you have 4 ads or fewer in a campaign, LinkedIn will only show each individual member of your audience one of your ads every 24 hours. Okay, that's fair. As soon as you put a 5th ad in there, now it can show 5 times in a 48-hour period to the same individual. The same rule applies to 6, the same rule applies to 7, so it maxes out at 7. So what LinkedIn is essentially asking you to do when they say, hey, launch 5 creatives, launch 7 creatives, they're trying to say, let us overserve your audience. You've got this audience where, let's say, half only logs in once per month, and let's say 10% logs in every day. What it's doing is it's way oversaturating the 10% who are on LinkedIn every day, because now they're seeing multiple of your ads every day, while half of your audience is only going to see like 1 impression that month. And so I don't appreciate that that recommendation from LinkedIn. It's very self-serving to them. It makes the auction more competitive, allowing bigger, larger budgets to overserve and kind of cut other people out. And it's causing all of us to have to pay more while oversaturating segments of our audience. So I would recommend 2 to 4 ads per campaign, like 2 if you can, because that's going to be a lot better of an A/B test than 4. But that's where my recommendations exit what LinkedIn recommends.
Great, that was super helpful. So Kaysen has this question. If you meet with a potential client who doesn't have or want to spend what you believe is necessary for a campaign to thrive, how do you handle those situations and justify it to them? And even if it's not a client, like I know a lot of people have to, of course, talk to their like above them. So how do you handle those discussions?
I am really straightforward ahead of time, where I say, I don't think that this budget is enough to actually see results by the end of the month. So, and you're going to say this and they're going to forget it, but you're going to remind them. You're going to say, because of this, after a month, when I would normally be telling you how things are working or what's not working, I won't be able to tell you that. We're going to have to run these tests longer. So they'll have to run maybe more like 60 days, 90 days, based off of the budget that they give. So if you tell them that up front, they have to tell, if it's a boss, they have to go to their boss and say, oh man, like we can't really touch these ads for 60 days or 90 days. Maybe we should think about including more budget so we actually can give a proper test. I think letting people know ahead of time what to expect. They're still going to say, yeah, that sounds good for us. And then they'll ask on day 3, how are things going? But yeah, I think that's the best way to handle it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And so we'll do one last question here, and it's from Jessica. And Jessica asks, what is the best ad type for each ad objective?
Oh, that's impossible to answer. I will tell you my favorite ad types. We talked about this back on the last one. So if you missed, Jessica, if you missed the one last week, the first in the series, we talked a lot more about ad formats. But I will tell you my absolute favorite ad format right now is thought leader video ads. So you have a thought leader or the founder or a head of a department of your company record a quick video where they're sharing some kind of value. They share that on their own LinkedIn profile with like, here's why I think this is valuable. And then you promote that as a thought leader ad to your audience. That is by far the highest performing ad that we've seen right now. It's amazing.
Cool. That is perfect. So I think we can keep going.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. I'm going to run you through some advice that your LinkedIn reps might be giving you that I would call expensive advice, meaning that if you take their advice, you're going to be paying more and significantly more than you should. The first of these deadly pitfalls. So there's 4 main pitfalls, but one of them I need to evaluate a little or elaborate a little bit more. So it's going to be like a 4+1. I'm going to give you a bonus one. The first one is when you choose the geography of a campaign. It's right after you choose your objective. It's the first question that you're faced with is, what geography do you want to target? It sets the default of recent or permanent. And what recent means that LinkedIn won't tell you, recent means that it's anyone who's been in that geography in the last 6 months. if I heard recent, I would think, oh, they're there right now. Like if you're targeting someone at a conference in Minneapolis, you're targeting Minneapolis on recent or permanent, someone's there. No, 6 months after they get back from the conference, when they go back to Chicago, they're still being targeted as if they were in Minneapolis, which I think is crazy. So always, unless you're trying to target a temporary location, always switch that to permanent geography. And there's just no downside to doing that. That's also the reason why we have some clients in the summer who will be like, hey, I know we're targeting North America only, but we're starting to get leads from like the Philippines and Europe. And it's because people travel, especially in the summer, and as they're tourists and they visit different countries, now they go back to their home countries and are being served your ads. You don't want that. All right. The next one is the audience expansion box. So LinkedIn automatically checks this on every campaign that you create. What it is they take the audience that you've put together and they go try to add other people that they think might be useful here. It's the same logic that they put into this is the same logic that they used for lookalike audiences that they shut down due to lack of performance like a year ago. They still keep this as a default setting, which I think is blatantly offensive. Every single campaign you do, you're already paying a premium to advertise on LinkedIn. You do not need them to muddy your audience with people who are not part of your ideal target audience. So always uncheck that box. Just remember, baby seals get clubbed every time that you leave that on. So care for the baby seals, please. Always uncheck that box. The next is the LinkedIn Audience Network. Anytime that you choose an ad format that is in the newsfeed, LinkedIn is going to automatically place you on a placement called the LinkedIn Audience Network, or LAN. Initially, when you leave LAN on, it looks really good. You see your costs per click get really small. Like you went from a $10 cost per click, let's say, down to all of a sudden you're paying $1 or $2 per click. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then you see click-through rates that are like 3 to 5%. You're like, this is amazing. Then if you actually dig deep into that traffic, there's a lot of bot and spam traffic that's coming through. And LinkedIn tries to only charge you for the ones that they can tell are human, but there's a lot that they don't know, and bad actors that continue to automatically click on your ads from an app that the user has no idea that that's happening. The audience network will spend your whole day's budget. There's no sort of a pacing intelligence there. So you could spend your entire day's budget in as little as 10 minutes. And then you're like, oh, great. What do I do for the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of the day? My whole budget's gone. So unless you are specifically wanting to advertise on the audience network, always uncheck that, and never, ever, ever advertise on the audience network without a proper block list. I can share. I have a podcast episode where I shared my block list that I put together that leaves only the highest quality placements, like New York Times and Business Insider and the Wall Street Journal kinds of places. So I'm happy to go try to find it and surface that link for anyone who wants it. But it's a podcast episode about the audience network if you want to go search on through the last probably 10 episodes on the LinkedIn Ads show. And then finally, pitfall number 4, LinkedIn's default bidding method is maximum delivery bidding. What maximum delivery is a CPM bid. So they're charging you whether or not someone is actually taking action on your ads, which is super risky for you as an advertiser. And on top of that, the maximum delivery part is LinkedIn gets to bid as high as it needs to on CPM to spend your daily budget. And so maximum delivery bidding is the most expensive way to pay for your traffic on LinkedIn. 90% of the time is what I say. It's probably closer to 95%. So instead, what you want to do, switch away from maximum delivery bidding to begin with. And the one that you choose instead is actually hidden. You have to click the one that says see more options. And there's only one option that appears, and that's manual CPC bidding. So this is the bonus one. I have to talk about what you actually do now that you have chosen manual CPC bidding. I mentioned that maximum delivery, it's the most expensive way to pay for your traffic, and that they've hidden manual CPC. But that's your least expensive way to pay for your traffic 90% of the time. So you obviously want to get to use it properly. LinkedIn's going to give you a recommendation when you choose it. They're going to say, other people like you are bidding $38 to $94 per click, which is absolutely insane. And it's a total lie. Unless it's like Fortune 500s who have more money than they have brains, then they might be, but it's a total lie. So I suggest bidding significantly lower than what LinkedIn recommends. Most of our clients were paying between like $6 to $8 per click. So if you bid, LinkedIn's recommending 17, screw that. Just go and bid like 7 or 8 to begin with. And you want to set your daily budget higher than you're actually comfortable with. Because if it's too low and you spend your full budget, and LinkedIn will even let you spend 50% over your budget every day. If it ever cuts off, it takes you out of the auction for the rest of the day because you've spent your daily budget. You don't actually know what the campaign was capable of spending. So if I bid $7, there are 3 possibilities of what could happen. I could have bid too low, and I'm going to see that LinkedIn is not spending my daily budget. And I go, okay, I can come back, in the next 2 business days, and I'll increase it by $1 or increase it by 50 cents, slowly until I find out where the optimal bid is, where it's actually going to spend my budget. Number 2, I could have guessed perfectly. $7 bid is exactly how much I need to bid to spend my daily budget for the day. Cool. It's rarely ever exact, but you can get close. The third possibility, this is amazing when this happens, $7 actually allows you to overspend your budget. And that's a signal that you can now go in and lower. So you might bid more like 6 or 5. And your goal in all of this, you want to find, in full days. LinkedIn's full day is from midnight to midnight UTC time. So like Great Britain time. But you want to find what is the minimal amount that I can bid to still spend my full budget. These are the things I keep in mind. Every 2 to 4 business days, I'll make a change like this. Then evaluate how close did the full days where I was bidding that amount come to actually spending my daily budget. If it's spent under, I can raise my bids. If it's spent right at or over, then I can probably lower my bids a little bit. And that is by far the most foolproof way of making sure that you're paying significantly less than your competitors. Because I guarantee it's a lot of work your competitors are not doing. And if you can get a 20, 30, 50% discount on what your competitors are paying, immediately you're getting 20 to 50% more attention than they are, which is pretty amazing. Then when you actually launch ads, especially the sponsored content ads, the ones that are in the newsfeed, I look at the click-through rate. And the click-through rate here depends on the objective that you choose. And so the definition I use kind of unifies all of these. What I'm saying is this is a landing page click-through rate. LinkedIn doesn't calculate this for you unless you're using website visits or website conversions objective. So I do this. I export my data to Excel to calculate this, or just do it manually with a calculator. You take your total landing page clicks. They call it landing page clicks or landing page visits, divided by impressions. And then if your click-through rate, this derived landing page click-through rate, if it's less than about 0.45%, so a little less than 0.5%, that usually means that there's something wrong. You've given this audience something that it's not engaging to them, that they don't care about, or maybe the audience was chosen improperly. And so this is like a stop, reevaluate what's going on and try again. But let's say, and this happens most of the time, let's say you launch an ad and it actually lands in between about 0.45 to 1%. This is great. This is the position where you get to affect your volume simply by bidding up slightly or bidding down slightly on your per click price, your manual bid price. If I have a 1% click-through rate, great. If my boss comes to me tomorrow and says, hey, we want to double our budget, we want to spend twice as much in February than we are in January, I know that my ads are performing well enough that I can increase my bids a little bit and all of a sudden really expand my budget. It's a great method to scale. But then what if you get this landing page click-through rate is over 1%? This is where The break-even point is on LinkedIn, where when you are willing to pay by the impression or whether you're willing to pay by the click, it's where they cross. So the higher your landing page click-through rate is over 1%, that is when CPM bidding, the higher the click-through rate, the more CPM bidding makes sense, and the lower your effective cost per click per lead is going to be. So this 1% or above, this is where I switch my bidding to maximum delivery. This is that 10% of the time that it makes the most sense, and you'll actually get lower costs than if you were manually bidding, which is amazing. If you follow this strategy, this is going to always allow you to pay the least amount for your LinkedIn traffic. And again, I guarantee your competitors are not doing this. Here's a quick example of this in action. So we took a client on, this was in July. They were, you could see the July and June off the graph. They were paying about $13 per click on average. As soon as we took it over in July, for August, we reduced that to $8.22 per click. And we continued just following exactly the same strategies I shared, down to where December has been a $5.7 per click, all the while increasing conversion rates, increasing pipeline, all to say that if you follow these rules, this works and you can save a lot of money. And it's sustainable. Like it's not one of those things like you do it this month and the next month it reverts. As long as you keep testing and trying new offers, new things that are fresh, keeping your click-through rates up, this is the effect of what you can have. I mean, we literally cut their costs in half, so their budget is now stretching twice as far. All right. Again, huge dump of information on you. Good time to ask you, what questions have you had along the way?
Wonderful. So one thing before we leave it, because you just talked about it. So Amanda has this question. Can you put the calculation somewhere? So on the page just before this one, and it was like the third. So if you go back, yeah. So you're talking about like the landing page CTR. Can you say again this part? I think that's what Amanda is looking for.
Absolutely. And I'll throw it up here on a Word document, and I'll hurry and throw it on the screen.
Oh, Angel. Yeah, I think that would be so helpful because I think there's some more questions about this topic. So I think we really want to pause here.
Okay. Landing page clicks over impressions. I'll make this huge.
Perfect.
And whoops, that's probably too huge. And I'll throw it up here on the screen.
Great. And I found the episode of your podcast. I put it also in the chat for anyone who was looking for that. I know some people had that in the Q&A, so I put it in both places just for the link.
Perfect. So that's the formula. Landing page CTR is your landing page clicks divided by impressions. Depending on your objective, if you're using the engagement objective or the brand awareness objective, LinkedIn calls a click any sort of interaction with the ad. But that's not a landing page click. If you use this definition across all of your different ad formats, no matter what objective you choose, you can compare them apples to apples. And I love that. Landing page clicks, the way you can find this metric in Campaign Manager is you have to switch your columns to engagement, and then you scroll over about 2/3 of the way and you'll see that landing page clicks. Or it might be called landing page visits, but something like that metric. Take that, divide it by your impressions, you're good to go.
Perfect. That's really, really helpful. And Dave has a question, I think, in a similar direction. So is LinkedIn lying when they say your bid of $7 may be too low to reach your target audience? Increase your bid for better results.
Yep, lying. Straight up lying. You don't know until you test. So when you set that bid, the thing is that recommendation that LinkedIn fires is not based off of past performance, and it's not based off of your budget. All it's doing is looking at your bid, and they set internally some limit where they're like, oh, if it's below this, that it's probably not going to spend. But it's not based off of past performance. If you have campaigns targeting the same audience and you're already bidding $7 and then or $6 or $5 and spending exactly what you want, and then they show that message, it's an absolute lie. Like if they were looking at your past performance or current performance, they would know that bid is actually very appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a little bit similar, and Katie has a question. I work in a B2B industry where we have a very small niche audience. My firm has never done advertising before, so we're just getting started to consider it and are very conservative in spending. Is there a minimum spend that you suggest? Are there daily budgets or links that you suggest? And actually, more people want to have an answer to that as well, besides just Katie.
Yeah, so this one's really hard to answer because it totally depends on like the readiness of your audience for your product or service that we call like your product market fit, the size of your audience, the level of competitiveness, how active they are on the platform. So for all of those reasons, I can't give you an exact answer. But what I tell clients who are considering advertising is I wouldn't ever dedicate less than $5,000 a month to the LinkedIn advertising program if I'm targeting anywhere in North America. North America clicks are more expensive, and you want to make sure that you have enough data to tell you whether it's working or not. Not that it would be a problem to spend less. It just means that you'd have to wait longer for insights. And I have not found that most bosses are willing to wait longer. They tend to be pretty impatient. So yeah, you could certainly do it, give less budget to it. If you do, I would suggest focus that budget just on your warmest audiences, retargeting audiences, your mailing list, the people who've engaged with your ads or your LinkedIn company page, people who visited your website. If you've already set that retargeting up, you just have to do that ahead of time. All of those audiences are going to be warmer, and then you could focus, and even an ABM list of like specific companies you want to go after. Those create a very small audience that won't spend very much money, but it should be more effective when you do spend those dollars. And then when you prove the program out, then you can say, okay, great, let's expand to more of LinkedIn's audiences that we can reach that aren't retargeting or lists. I've also found that if you are taking cold traffic and trying to turn them into sales ready leads, that's not a fast process for most companies. Usually we have to have at least 3 touches with the brand before they're even willing to do that. And 3 touches with the brand, if you're paying $10 a click on LinkedIn, that's spending $30 per one of these people. And it's a process that can take place over 3 to 6 months. So I would say planning any sort of LinkedIn ads program, get as much budget as you can, up to 5K, and plan on at least 3 months to prove out the concept and watch as your engagement increases, to say, hey, look at what we're seeing so far. And if we keep investing into this audience, with additional budget, we're going to see even more results. We're just spinning this program up. That's the way I would ask for more budget.
I think that's really helpful. We have, I think, 2 more questions that we can do, maybe more, we'll see. Kason has one. So I've heard what you are discussing, I think the bidding rules called bid ratcheting to get the best CPC for the greatest results. I've tried this and it's been successful, but has this process changed over LinkedIn over time? Like, will it change more over time? And they say GA4 changes almost monthly.
As long as LinkedIn doesn't, they made a mistake early on. So when you look at Meta and you look at Google, the 2 most advanced ad platforms on the planet, they did something right. They said whether the client bids CPC or whether they bid CPM, if they're performing about average, it's the same to us as the network. We're going to make about the same amount of money on a benchmark like click-through rate. LinkedIn did it wrong. When they figured out the math, for some reason, they decided that CPM was going to be significantly, like, twice as expensive as bidding CPC. And so unless they decide to fix their auction, which they have not done in the last, it came out in 2008. They haven't touched that particular aspect. Unless they decide to change that or change the bidding methods that we have, like if they decided to take away manual bidding, for instance, like CPC bidding, those are the only 2 things I could think of that would change this. Otherwise, your bid ratcheting is always going to be effective.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions, but I think they're like short answer questions potentially. We'll
Cool.
see what you think. So Jessica says, can we create a custom column so we can see the landing page CTR right away instead of always manually calculating?
No, unfortunately. I wish we could. Sorry.
Okay. The next one is from Dave. We average around $1.30 per click. Is that good? Yes or no?
If that's, it sounds like the LinkedIn Audience Network has been left on that campaign. If so, that's $1 per click wasted. But if you, and that's also possibly in an engagement where, sorry, an objective where every engagement counts as a click. Go and do that calculation as long as it's not using the Audience Network. Do the landing page cost per click. So you do your costs divided by your number of landing page clicks, and do that landing page click-through rate, this formula I showed. If that is still over 1% and Audience Network is off, yes, you're doing amazing. But if not, change those settings and try again.
Okay, cool. And then the last one is, should we keep running ads over the holidays? Are people on there? Are we looking at it?
My answer 3 years ago was no, pause for the holidays. But so many people pause for the holidays that what it does is it brings the level of competition down. And so now in the past 3 years, we've seen costs actually drop over the holidays rather than increase like they used to. So as long as you're bidding CPC, that's your insurance policy to make sure that additional competition that comes in can't make you pay more. As long as you're doing that, especially the campaigns that are meant to warm and educate people, keep those running. You could pause your bottom of funnel stuff, the stuff that's trying to push people right to demo, because if they schedule a demo during the Christmas break and a sales team's not going to be in there to schedule with for like 7 more days, okay, like maybe you don't want to run that. But yeah, in general, I would say go ahead and run all the way through the holidays.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, those were the questions. So I think we can keep going. I know we have about 14 minutes left.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump into retargeting. The kinds of retargeting that you have access to on LinkedIn, back in, I think it was 2017, they gave us website retargeting. And it's the same as all of the other website retargeting features that we get if it's Meta or Google or anyone else. It's entirely cookie based. It means if someone visits your website, LinkedIn puts a cookie in their browser and says, hey, LinkedIn remembers them and this is who they are. And then if, like happens probably 50% of the time, they leave your website, they go to do something else, they're in a Safari or any sort of browser on the iOS platform or any sort of Apple product, those all delete the cookie within, sometimes seconds, sometimes days. And so immediately LinkedIn, like when they come back to your website or they come back to LinkedIn, LinkedIn doesn't remember who they are anymore. So website retargeting is weak. You can still use it. You should still use it for those who LinkedIn is going to remember, but just realize it's weak compared to the other kinds of retargeting. But then you have all these other retargeting methods that LinkedIn has that are actually really amazing. I'm used to LinkedIn being 4 years behind Meta in everything that they do, but I recently went into Meta to create a retargeting audience, and I noticed, wow, LinkedIn has more and better options for this engagement retargeting. The way it works, when you're logged into LinkedIn and you click on something or you view something, LinkedIn's like, oh, I remember that. Like they were logged in, so I know exactly who they are and I know what they did and I remembered. So with these new engagement forms of retargeting, they let us add people to audiences of like, hey, let's remember anyone and be able to target later anyone who opened one of my lead gen forms, or maybe just those who actually submitted it. Anyone who watched at least 25% of one of my video ads, let's remember them. Anyone who's visited my company page in the last year, remember them. Anyone who's engaged in any way with a single image ad. Anyone who's engaged at all with an event, like a LinkedIn event that I'm advertising. Anyone who's engaged with a document ad. And this is like, and LinkedIn's just going to keep coming out with these. What's so cool to me about this is, let's say you've been running video ads for half a year. you could go today and say, hey, LinkedIn, let's create a retargeting audience of anyone who watched at least 50% of one of my video ads. And LinkedIn's going to go back 180 days and go, oh yeah, I know who all these people were. Within 2 days, you've got an audience that you can now target. It allows you to build these audiences in arrears, which is amazing. Facebook first allowed us to do this. I'm really glad LinkedIn did too. So this is how you define who your audiences, who your warmer audiences are. And I may not have a slide about it, so I'll just touch quickly on it. You know that cold audiences are not ready to talk to your sales team. You know that it takes more interactions, more education with a consumer before they're willing to talk to someone on average, especially in a cost-efficient kind of way. So the way that you can find these people is by leveraging your retargeting. What we do is we build this into at least a 3-stage funnel, where like you have your top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. Sometimes we'll do more like 5 stages, depending. And all of that hinges off of this ability to use the retargeting and define what those stages are. It's a little tricky, but LinkedIn lets you do it. I also want to share with you some advanced targeting tactics that you can go and do right now. One of my favorite ways, and I've shared this, towards the beginning of the webinar, I love to target by skill. I love to target by group. They're both fantastic, but I also realize that there are audiences of usually salespeople, business development people, and marketers who are trying to sell to your audience. And that means they go and join the same groups that they're in. It means they list the same skills in their profile to look more like them. And so anytime I'm using skill or group targeting, what I will do is immediately go and exclude the job functions of marketing, sales, and business development, as long as you're not trying to specifically target one of those. What it does is it gets rid of your technically competitors. They may not be, exact competitors, but they are competitors for your audience's attention. They are happy to click on your ads and see what someone else is saying to their audience, especially because they want to get more educated, but it's just going to be a waste of a click. They're not going to be your customer. So you can exclude them from the beginning. Something else that very few people realize, when a company creates a company page, one of the fields that they have to fill out is company size. And it's like 1 to 10, 11 through 50, 51 to 200, and so on. It's these buckets. So most people will go and choose like, hey, yeah, I only want to target companies with between 1,000 and 5,000 employees. But some I've seen go the opposite way, and they actually do an exclusion where they'll say, we only want to target large companies, so we are going to exclude any company with 0 through 1,000 employees, let's say. By doing that as an exclusion, what they've effectively told LinkedIn is, yes, give us the other portion that we want, the 1,000 employees and above. But what they're also saying is, and also give us all of the companies that are of unknown size. If someone is a LinkedIn member, but they haven't claimed to work for a company, or maybe their company has not created a company page, so LinkedIn doesn't know how large they are, they go into this bucket of unknowns. And the unknowns are accessible by excluding. You exclude known company sizes, and you're inherently including the unknowns, which tend to be very small companies. This works really well for those of you who, let's say you try to target small companies. Maybe it's small business owners, small agencies, whatever. You can say, I want to exclude any company larger than 11 people or larger than 50. You're going to be left with the 0 through 10 or 0 through 50 knowns, but then you're also going to be given the unknowns, which are less competitive and probably still in that same company size. And now you have a wider audience. It probably doubles your total audience size, and you get them at lower prices because they're less competitive. So it's a cool hack for those of you who, if you specifically want small companies. There's also targeting age and years of experience in the platform. And you may be tempted to use one of these filters. Same thing with gender. these are inferred. LinkedIn never actually asked you what year you were born, so they don't know how old you are. They're looking at when you started your first position and listed it on LinkedIn, and they're guessing like, oh, most people start their first position at the age of 23 or whatever. Like they're going to try it that. Years of experience, same deal. Gender, they look at the name and they try to guess like, is this a male name or a female name? And they get it wrong sometimes. And you don't want your ad to be like, are you a female executive? And there's a guy with the name of, I had a client whose name was Ariel, and he's like, no, I'm not a female executive, but thanks for asking. All of these, because they are inferred, they're not super accurate. And especially if it's age or years of experience, I would just use seniority instead. It's based off of the seniority found in your job title. And then I've already mentioned audience expansion. That's the one that if you leave that box checked, someone clubs a baby seal and we need to save the baby seals. So avoid that like COVID-19. I'm just going to quickly check and see how many slides I have left, because I want to make sure. Yes.
And we have about 5 minutes left until the end.
Okay. I'll try to blow through this, but you'll have access to these slides so you can come back and check this. These are the metrics that I really like to track that LinkedIn doesn't necessarily show me. This is the metric that I showed you before, my link CTR. These are my link clicks over impressions. There's also cost per link click, which is my costs over landing page clicks. My conversion rate. LinkedIn will use the whole column called conversions to calculate cost per conversion and conversion rate. But that's very misleading because your conversions column is actually adding together click conversions and view through conversions. We can't talk about this right now, but view through conversions, I do not base ad performance off of. That was a conversion that occurred on a different platform. And the only thing we know is that one of our ads appeared on their screen in the last 7 days. That's not super helpful. So for my conversion rate, I take my click conversions plus my leads, and I divide that by link clicks, which is what we've been talking about before. And I add my lead form opens just in case I'm using lead forms. That's going to tell me my conversion rate, how many actual form fills I had out of the total number of clicks that could have resulted in an actual conversion in a form fill. My cost per conversion is exactly the same formula. It's just my costs divided by my click conversions and leads. And then finally, I just said engagement rate because LinkedIn actually calculates engagement rate, but I do track these things. If you go into Excel in a pivot table and you build these as calculated fields, you can then keep reusing the same Excel spreadsheet and you never have to recalculate this again. That's one little data hack that we do to save ourselves time. But do get very comfortable with these formulas. For those of you who are doing video, these are the video metrics that I like to track that, again, LinkedIn's not going to calculate these for you. I like to calculate my 50% view rate. What percentage of people who start viewing my video make it to 50%? That's a really good judge of how engaging my video is. They will tell you your completion rate, which is great. I look for completion rates that are over 2%. They will tell you your cost per view, which is great. Then I calculate a cost per 50% view. It's just like my view rate, but it's how much did I have to pay to get someone to watch at least 50% of my video. And then my cost per completion. Those are my 5 favorite metrics with video to track.